You've got a few companies that have interesting news coming out in 2026.
In the Australian market, we're punters, right? Like we like to play the catalysts. And over the last 2 weeks, we've seen the highs and the lows of what happens when a catalyst goes completely right and one that goes completely wrong. They've been developing their cancer asset for over 10 years. And phase 3 trial failed. Their stock dropped 90%.
And I met Chris for a coffee a week before that. He came to our office.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, yeah, we've got this trial underway. We're doing this, we're doing that. And I look at it. I'm like, okay, cool. This looks interesting. So I put it on my watch list. Right. Next week, the stock blows up.
This is one of those like high risk, super high reward ones.
Well, Jace, thanks for doing this.
Of course. Welcome.
Mate, for those listening, how about you give a 30-second overview on yourself?
So I've started a newsletter called the Armchair Analyst. I am the Armchair Analyst, effectively. And it's a daily covering. I covered every single day. I cover what happens in the ASX life sciences sector.
Yeah.
And I really like the sector. I've found some really, really interesting companies. I started about 3 to 4 months ago and already amassed a pretty decent following. And I set myself a challenge at the start of the year to cover all 165 ASX listed companies and write about them. Look, it's going to take me a while. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get them all in the next 12 months, but so far I've made my way through 32 of them.
Okay.
And I've probably got about another 10 to 15 in the pipeline of just company management that I've spoken to. And over that journey, I've learned a lot from, healthcare. The healthcare sector doesn't just cover drug developers, but also medical devices, cannabis companies, as well as your healthcare service providers. And there's a real interesting broad scope of it. And healthcare investing is different to your necessarily value investing or even mining investing. And something in my old job, I was an analyst for 6 years at an organization called Next Investors, and I covered both healthcare and mining stocks as well. And in the mining sector, it's really interesting. There's this idea that you have a patch of dirt, you have a piece of land, and you're exploring for gold, let's say, and the gold price goes up and that patch of dirt now becomes a little bit more valuable than your other patch of dirt, which is exploring for nickel, let's say, right? Now, in the healthcare sector, there's no gold price for heart attacks. So how do you know what macro thematic or how do you know what industry or interesting thing that's happening is actually the next wave of innovation that's going to come up and all the capital is going to go get allocated to? It's a lot harder in the healthcare sector, so you have to put in a little bit more work and actually dig a little bit deeper.
There's probably heart attacks because of gold prices.
Yeah. Gold price goes down, falls enough, and then the heart attacks happen. Yeah, it's
like how about that, right? Like I've been looking at the gold price last couple of weeks, and I don't know why it's falling. It seems almost nonsensical. Yeah, inflation's high. You've got all these tensions globally. Yeah. And the US 10-year yields are going up, gold's going down. Yeah. My only logic is people are probably getting, squeezed or margin called. Yeah. I don't know. It seems interesting. But I remember we first met when you were still at Next. Yeah. And you guys had a few rippers.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the best. So we covered Dimerix. We started when they started their phase 3 clinical trial. Yeah. They had the share
phase
price.
2.
No, not the phase 2. After the phase 2, just at the start of the phase 3, the $20 million that they raised, we got in then. Then they started the trial and then sort of ran out of money just before the interim result. That's when you guys got in. Awesome investment, like 10 out of 10, 8 cent round, 2 for 2 option. Trading it, you got all the way up to 80 cents, trading at about 30 now. We got in like Aravella, that 10 bagged for us. EIQ. I had a look at the EIQ.
Have you looked at it today?
Yeah, I had a look at the share price today. It's closing in on $1. Yeah, which is pretty amazing. I wrote at the start of the year. So back to the idea of macro theme investing for biotechs. there's this concept that I like to follow, which is like the Me Too, or what's the next X stock. So everyone's looking for the next Afterpay or the next, De Grey Mining. But and that's how biotechs tend to move, is that when you have one big runner, everyone starts to look down the
what's
downstream.
next?
Yeah, what's next? So 40X is probably the company that's been on the biggest tear over the last 12 months in terms of, they did last year in April, they did 100, they did a big raise. I think it was at 40 cents with a 1-for-1 option with a piggyback as well. And the stock's just gone like absolute haywire. They raised $150 million at the start of the year. I think it was around $3.50, and they just tipped $7 this morning, or got close to $7.
Yeah, okay.
And they're medical. So just a little bit of context, 40X has a medical imaging product that they sell into hospitals at a basic at its core. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's effectively what they do. And everyone's now looking, what other medical imaging companies have we missed?
Yeah.
Because we all the street, they missed 40X. So it's like they start to look down the
what's the next 10 bagger?
Yeah, what's the next 10 bagger? And then they look at EIQ. Wow, that's another medical imaging company that uses AI to evaluate a bunch of images to detect heart conditions. They've got a big catalyst coming up. So there's all the catalyst traders that come in. They got the 510K clearance coming up for heart failure. And so their stock's traded absolutely.
They got 510 for aortic stenosis, right?
Aortic stenosis. But if you sort of like imagine your heart failure TAM is like a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Aortic stenosis is probably like a bathtub, right? Yeah. So, and also it gets a little bit complicated, but the reimbursement pathway for heart failure is a lot easier than for aortic stenosis, because there's already another company that has a code. So all these things, like it's not just about getting a product to market and getting the clearance. It's actually about how you can sell it. So yes, even though EIQ got a product to market, that's where
the battle begins, really.
That's where the battle begins, exactly. And I think that what I've learnt over my time covering stocks, but in particular since I started the newsletter, is that the company, there's two different types of companies. There's your drug developers and your medical device stocks, right? The drug developers, the risk points, I think you even mentioned it to me, the risk points for the drug developers, that's on whether or not you can actually bring the asset to market. Once the drug's in market, finding people to use it is not going to be too hard, particularly if you've got orphan indication, small population.
Yeah.
But for the medical device companies, getting to market, that's the start. Actually commercializing it, selling it, that's the real challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that something that investors can take away from this is that the understanding those risk points is for the medical devices. Like if you get approval, that's the starting line.
Yeah.
For the drug developers, getting approval, wow, you've made it. And it's just an interesting difference.
Yeah. Let's step back. Let's take a macro view for a second.
Yeah.
So people that are not the armchair analyst and don't work with some investment banking firm, have no idea about how all this works.
Yeah.
Let's divide it. What's biotech? What's medtech?
So the biotech companies are developing effectively drugs to cure or treat diseases. In order to get a drug approved, it needs to go through clinical trials. Generally, it starts in a lab, usually in a university. Some companies do their own R&D, but usually they license it from a university. Some university professors been evaluating some mechanism of action over a period of time, and then looking to take that, advance it through the clinic. Then you take it through to human patients and you run a study, and you need to evaluate whether or not the drug's safe. So that's the first. If it's not safe, then no one's going to take it. Doesn't matter how well it works. Then you do a second trial, a phase 2, and that's a larger trial, more patients, more people, more money. But you start to get data, and you start to collect this data package, and that's how why biotech investing is so interesting. Biotech, the drug development side, biotech investing is so interesting because you get all these value inflection points as you get more data. You've proven that it's safe. You've proven that it's now somewhat effective at different doses. And then you run your final phase 3 clinical trial. And look, I've said this in about 10 sentences, but really that's 10 years of work, right? 10 plus years of work.
Takes about, I think, on an average, $200 million.
Yeah, $200 million. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Right? And look, there's companies try to find ways to like shortcut it, or there are ways in which you can get to market faster.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you still have to get the data, still have to prove it in the clinic.
Exactly.
And then so on the medical device side of things, depending on which regulatory pathway you're going down to get the product approved will depend on how quick it is. So you can, with a 510K application, all you have to do is be this equivalent to something that exists in the market.
Yeah.
And once you can show that, then you can get that product approved. So you don't necessarily need to do as many human studies or as many studies as you would for the drug developer.
Yeah.
But all the studies that you do are about proving that it's working, and then you have to sell into doctors, and you have to get your key opinion leaders and your advocates, and it's really about finding product market fit and what's your value proposition, rather than just, hey, the drug's approved, now everyone's going to go buy it.
So like, for example, in the case of like Echo IQ or like a 4D medical, I mean, they would have to prove that they're at least as good as like an MRI or CT scan or something similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey there, sorry for the interruption. It's only going to take a moment. If you like today's episode and would like to see more content like this, please like, subscribe, and follow the channel. This will help us grow and invite more amazing guests onto the show. Also, if you know somebody you'd like to see on the show as a guest, comment their name down below or reach out to me and we'll make it happen. Now back to the video. And that would be a 510. And so one thing that, I often come down to when I look at medtech devices is the reimbursement. And I think for an average retail investor, that's sort of a really important thing to understand. Tell us a bit about how reimbursement works. What are these CPT codes? Why they're so important?
Yeah, great question. Complicated. So the pathway, so I have this framework, right? Of what does it actually take to sell a product, a medical device product, right? So the first part is getting the product approved. You're not going to be able to sell anything that's not approved. Then the second part is reimbursement. What's your reimbursement pathway?
Yeah.
So reimbursement is effectively the insurance company or the government paying to subsidize the cost of your product.
Yeah.
So let's say you sell your product for $300, then the insurance company might cover that either entirely or a large chunk of it. Now, if you're a doctor, a surgeon, or a physician using a medical device product, if it's not covered, then they have to make a judgment call. Do I add this $300 already to the surgery? And is that going to change the patient's decision to actually take up the procedure? So if the answer is yes, they're not going to take it. Then if there's no reimbursement in place, then the physician's probably not going to be able to sell that product. But if there is reimbursement in place, then the physician's much more likely to reimburse it. So it depends on which market it is. So some markets, let's take the dental market, for example, people are a lot more used to paying out of pocket for extra costs, right? So
I know.
If you want to get your teeth whitened.
Can I say it sucks?
Yeah, it sucks, right? But you'll do it, right? You'll do it. Whereas if it's something like, and I'm just using this as an example because I recently wrote about it, but if you're like going in for surgery and you got a nerve repair product, then maybe you'll just tell the doctor, just use whatever nerve repair product it is. The marginal difference when you're under anesthesia, you're not necessarily going to understand the difference, but it's all in what's better for the surgeon to use. So they're the actual customers. It's not the patient, even though they're the ones paying. So it's really interesting. So get the product approved, get it reimbursed. You need to get adoption. So is it actually solving a real problem that one of these physicians have? So I always ask the question, what's the value proposition? What is this medical device actually solving? And then what is the alternative? Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be an alternative to any single product that's used. It just might be more painful. So, I mean, like, what's this? Probably the glass of water. Well, you could use a tin can, you can use whatever to hold, like, what's the function of this? To hold water and drink it, right? So whatever function that the medical device is actually doing, what is the actual alternative that's there? And is the product, there's two things. Is the product displacing something that exists, or is there a true unmet need where there actually legitimately is no alternative, and then the patient just has to suffer some horrible fate or something bad that they can't do? The medical devices that are solving the true unmet need rather than just sort of, displacing something that exists tend to do better. Yeah. So that's sort of the third part of the framework. And then underneath it all, it's sort of like, what do the doctors prefer? What's their preference? What do they want what's more easily accessible to them? What are they used to doing? Because changing someone's behavior is hard. It's not
very hard.
If particularly people have been doing things for a long time and in the same way. So how do you sell a product to someone to say, hey, that thing you've been doing for 30 years or for 15 years, hey, this is the better way to do it. And they're going to be like, oh, is it? Right? So that adoption curve and getting the product to market, it's all about, there's this sort of like bell curve that looks like that. And it's the technology adoption curve. But that's for most technologies, but never is it more pronounced for medical technologies, where you have to go after your early adopters, your innovators, your early market, and then you can get into your big market, which is your GPs and your physicians. And companies that don't have a strategy in order to tackle that and to get there, that's a big red flag. And I think that the companies have really deeply thought about it, even as part of the approval process, starting to speak to potential customers and getting understanding that's a really important
I think that's also why like advisory boards get set up, and that's why they're so important. You need somebody to champion your product, right? Because I mean, essentially what happens once you've got regulatory approval is you probably will have boots on the ground running around, catching up with doctors, trying to sell your product. And in a lot of cases, a lot of small Australian companies at least will tie up with, if it's an American market, they'll tie up with an American distributor.
100%.
And the sales reps there, it's like, have you watched that, forget the show around this, but they're all sales guys. And like all sales guys, they're going to go after the highest calorific value, 100%. Where can I get more commission? And so if you've got highest reimbursement, they're more likely to sell your product.
100%. And the interesting thing is, so I've been speaking to quite a few people in the field, and there was someone that I spoke to who he recruits medical sales teams in the US. So if you've got a medical device, he'll go and hire a bunch of reps. And the reps, particularly if you're using, so there's two ways you could go. You could go distribution. I'm going to go find a distribution partner. They're going to sell my product. Or you hire your own sales team. Now, if you hire your own sales team, it's a lot of money, a lot of money. And but you have total ultimate control. Now you're competing against other products, but you're not competing for the rep's attention. Now, if you go under the distribution pathway, you're competing for the rep's attention on all the other products he's got. And he's literally like got a bag that he has to go take to the doctor, to the hospital, and present all of the different whatever new devices that he's got.
He's like a high school drug dealer.
Yeah, high school drug dealer, right? And it's just really interesting what actually makes someone sell your product. And it's what's like people, it's just human nature. What's going to make them the best margin? What's the easiest thing for them to sell? And what's the thing they're going to be able to sell the most of, right?
Because I mean, for hospitals, that's the bottom line also ultimately, right? They're businesses. And I think if anybody's been in the medical system, they know, doctors are always pushing for procedures that are expensive because they got to meet their quotas also. And so like, tell me this, if you're looking at, so I like medical devices, right? They're good when you get them right. They're great investments. Very cost effective when you get them right. Do you have a framework that you would look at if it's a pre-510K company, let's say, and there's a few of those on the ASX? How do you pick winners from the losers?
I think so for pre-510K companies, they they have to start thinking about their commercial strategy early. How, like, what's the value proposition? How are they going to get into market? At the end of the day, like, science, like just having good science is not enough.
Yeah.
It has to solve an actual problem. So is the company taking something that was really good science and then trying to find an application for it, and they're sort of scratching around trying to find product market fit? Or is it that they've found a real problem that they want to solve and they're starting to develop the product for it?
Yeah.
So if the company is, hey, look, we just got this amazing technology out of the university, let's try find these are the potential applications for it, without actually speaking to doctors, without speaking to surgeons, without speaking to physicians, that's a red flag. Now, if the company's on the regulatory pathway, but they're like, we've spoken to all these physicians and doctors, this is the number one thing that they need solved right now, and we're in the labs trying to solve that and trying to build the product for that, that's a much more attractive proposition. And I think that's how you sort of, for the pre-510K companies, you kind of, it's still always commercial first, because once they get the product to market, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna be able to sell it. There's a really interesting company called Adherium. I'm not sure if you followed it before.
ADR?
ADR, right?
Yeah.
And they listed on the ASX, I think, in 2016. And they've had like, it's an interesting medical device. It's basically it's like a jacket that sits on top of an inhaler that tells you whether or not you're using your inhaler enough. That's the bottom line. Like, there's quite a bit more complicated than that. There's an application that sits around it. But they've had like 3 to 4 cracks at trying to solve a business model of this over, almost a 10-year period, because it's like they built the product and they hadn't really necessarily thought about what the go-to-market strategy is. What are they going to go do? So yes, the science is really good and it's interesting. It's an amazing product and there's real good technology that sits behind it. If you don't have a go-to-market strategy, even from early on when you're starting to try and solve a problem, then you're going to get a product to market and people are going to be like, oh, okay, like, thanks, next. And you're like, wow, I just spent 10 years developing this thing and hadn't even spoken to people about like whether or not they need it or not. And I think that, look, they're actually finally potentially finding their footing now, but it's taken a long time, right? And
they've had a decent run recently.
Decent run. Yeah. Well, basically what they did was that they changed up their sales strategy, right?
Yeah.
So they changed up their go-to-market strategy. They stopped. So they were originally the distribution model where they relied on distributors, and they're like, no, we're going to have our own internal sales team, hire a bunch of sales staff, call center. But, they're capped at, they're doing probably what, like $1 million a month in costs. And, are they going to be able to get there from a sales perspective to break even quick enough before they need to raise money? And they're capped at $11 million, right? So they don't have the luxury of being a $100 million market cap company that can go and just more fuel on the fire as a sales company. They really need to get there quickly. So that's why it's so important to get it right early without diluting down and just raising capital, trying to find product market fit. You really want to find product market fit early.
That's the thing with a lot of companies that I look at, especially in life sciences, right? Because it's so expensive to get anything done.
Yeah.
And for a lot of them, it becomes prohibitively dilutive.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I will look at a company, it's sort of, been dwindling for a better part of a decade. It's sort of sitting around 10, 20 mil market cap. They've got to spend $5 to $7 million to get to the next stage. And it's often, until they get there, there's no asymmetric value creation, right? So I was thinking about this and I was thinking, what role does AI have to play in this? Because I think AI is going to revolutionize, or it already is revolutionizing biotech in many ways, right? I don't know if you saw this last year. They were the first CRISPR kid that got treated.
Oh no,
they got their own. They got their own custom therapy done. And like the other thing I'm super interested in is like quantum. Because like for developers to actually identify a lead candidate for a drug, you've got to go through so many permutations, combinations. And if you can essentially do everything in tandem with qubits instead of supercomputers or regular computers, it could really streamline it, right? Like, I mean, you could take a drug to market at a tenth of the cost. Yeah. And that changes the game.
100%.
And given that we're going to have more diseases in the future, not less or fewer, what do you think? How do you think AI is changing the game?
So I think that the healthcare industry is probably the one that will be potentially the most disrupted from AI,
Yeah.
but probably the one that's going to be the slowest to adopt it, just because of the general nature of the conservative nature of how things are in the industry, in the sense that, so there's I actually spoke about this yesterday to someone. There's four areas that I think that healthcare is going to play a big role. AI is going to play a big role in healthcare. Yeah. And the first one was one that you absolutely nailed on the head, which is in drug discovery and in the drug development process. And I think that would be really, really interesting. And I'll just double click on that for a second, which is that at the moment, I think that the percentage fail rate as you go through the phases is something like, it's sort of, 50% from phase 1 to, look, don't quote me on these numbers, but like, and then it's sort of like 30% down from phase 2 to phase 3. And then, at the end of the day, from discovery through to commercialization, it might be like 8% chance, right?
Yeah.
So what AI, I think, will increase that chance from 8% to 15%, 20%. In the sense that it'll be better at predicting whether or not molecules, understanding the mechanism of action, will actually affect the outcomes, and it'll be much better at predicting clinical trials. So you have your molecule, you set up your clinical trial, you feed it into, at the moment or previously, it was like, okay, let's go do it, let's see. And it takes a lot of very skilled people to design these trials in a way that stack the deck in their favor. And I've seen a lot of companies that have not necessarily failed because the drug doesn't work, but failed because they didn't design the clinical trial right.
Yeah, and the trial design matters, right? Like, I'm invested in a company, it's private actually, and they do exactly this.
Yeah.
So AI for clinical trial design, because I suppose for those that don't know, most phase 1 trials will happen in healthy volunteers.
Yeah.
So they won't actually happen in people who are suffering from any thing that the drug's trying to cure. And I think when you get from that phase 1 to that phase 2, that big leap that you've got to make, that's, where clinical trial design becomes so important.
Yeah.
Do you think that Australia has an inherent disadvantage because we're a bit slower to adopt any new technology?
It's interesting. I actually don't think that's the reason why Australia has an inherent disadvantage. I think Australia is very good in terms of, and this is something that I've learned completely over the last 3 to 4 months, speaking to a lot of people. Australia's disadvantage is in the structure of the capital markets for its public companies that are actually trying to build companies around the biotech sector. The amounts of capital that are needed to take drugs to market is a lot. And where Australia succeeds really well is that we're really good at running phase, preclinical and phase 1 clinical trials for the rest of the world.
And that's it, right? Everybody comes here.
Everyone
takes the R&D tax.
Takes the R&D tax.
Yeah.
And what happens is when the R&D tax is at other countries. So when the R&D tax increased from zero, no R&D tax rebate to 48% or whatever it is.
Yeah,
all the service providers move up their price by 43%.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second thing that happened is that they realized that they can go and sell it to overseas, and through some creative accounting, they start going to all these different conferences, the Johnson & Johnson conference at the start of the year, telling all these big pharma companies, hey, come down to Australia, you can do your clinical trials, you get 43% back. And then all the service providers just increase their price again, which makes it more expensive for all the Australian companies. So the Australian companies who want to run clinical trials in Australia are paying a premium because they're competing against the rest of the world who are taking advantage of the R&D tax credit. The second part of it is, from a grants perspective, if you're a private company, you can get grants. But as soon as you're listed as a publicly listed company, getting grants is much more difficult because government looks at you and say, hey, look, you've got access to the market. You've got access to capital right there. Go and raise money from Mr. Market.
Yeah.
So it makes it really difficult. And then I think that the third thing is that the levels of sophistication from the biotech funds, there's some really good biotech only funds in Australia, but there's just not really necessarily enough to move the market.
Yeah.
So someone described it to me like this, which I thought was really interesting, which is that the NASDAQ and the US markets and the big pharma markets, that's like the Premier League. Best capital, best talent. They've got the most amount of money flying, best coverage from a sector and from a analyst coverage and all the big deals go down there. Australia's like, from a purely football sense, would be like Division 4.
It's
right?
like us and our mates playing somewhere.
Right.
So let's talk about a few specific things, because I know you've brought a few examples. And I suppose for those listening, this is some real value add.
Yeah.
So if you want more value add like this, you should go follow Jason's channel. We're going to link it as well. But you've got a few companies that have interesting news coming out in 2026.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
All right. So in the Australian market, we're punters, right? Like, we like to play the catalysts. And I think that over the last 2 weeks, we've seen the highs and the lows of what happens when a catalyst goes completely right and one that goes completely wrong. So 2 companies, Immutep, phase 3 clinical trial, really sad. They'd been they've been developing their cancer asset for over 10 years. And phase 3 trial failed on the futility analysis, which meant that they looked at the data and said, no, this trial's not working. So their stock dropped 90%. But then on the other side, you had a company, Amplia, another cancer
exceptionally
asset. Exceptionally well. They published results. I think it was a phase 1/2 for an add-on to a chemotherapy, and that for pancreatic cancer. And they ended up having so while the results in terms of median overall survival was on par with the best in class, they actually had five complete responses, which never happens. Yeah, look,
rarely happens.
Yeah, rarely happens. And so what that tells you is that the treatment works in a very, very well in a subset of people, right? And now they have to figure out what that means. So
you know what, on Amplia, like I met, I think they had about maybe 6-8 months back the first complete response. And I met Chris for a coffee a week before that. He came to our office. Yeah. And he was like, oh, yeah, we've got this trial underway. We're doing this, we're doing that. And I think Amplia would have been like sub 20 mil market cap.
Exactly.
Something like that, right? And I look at it, I'm like, okay, cool. This looks interesting. So I put it on my watch list, right? Next week, the stock blows up.
Oh, no way.
And I'm like, and so once it tapered down, it tapered back down to about, I think I bought in at around that sort of 15-ish.
Yeah, nice.
So I'm still holding.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And now it's back up at like 26.
Yeah, 26 cents. Yeah. And I think that look, it's a tough time at the moment to be, publishing results. People tend to be risk off with what's happening over in the Middle East. But still awesome result, up 100% on the day. It's 150% up from before the trial result, before they went into trading hold. So so catalysts do work and they also don't work. So this is the glory of the punt. So I wrote down, so Avecho, that's one that I'm watching. They've got a phase 3 interim readout for their insomnia trial. So insomnia, Australia only, phase 3, but they've got a licensing deal already in hand with a company called Sandoz. Why I think that's interesting is because Sandoz's number one product is, or not necessarily one of their top products is melatonin. So they understand the sleep market. So they really see big things for Avecho. But again, there's been 3 companies that have tried to develop cannabis products for insomnia in the Australian market, and all have failed. So
it's my understanding there's never been any indication of successful phase 3 CBD trial.
That's not true. The Epidiolex in the US succeeded, but that was for ultra rare epilepsy or something along those lines. But not in Australia for an over the counter. So then Cynata, CYP, they've got 2 clinical trial readouts in the next 6 months. Sorry, not in the next 6 months, in the next 3 months, I reckon. For stem cell product on acute graft versus host disease and I think it's osteoarthritis. That one's really interesting. They're capped at 70 million, and Mesoblast, who just last year got their stem cell product in market, they're capped at 3.5 billion. And Mesoblast took them a long time to get there, but because they sort of like broke the barrier of the FDA finally approving stem cell products. So CYP can now ride the coattails, makes it a lot easier.
And they had a really, really good, helpful number one shareholder, Mesoblast.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, no,
not every day a shareholder gives you $100 million.
Yep. It's been pretty insane that story. But I think that it's been interesting. I actually went for coffee with Silvio this week, and he was saying that like, from Mesoblast perspective, the markets are like when he goes to the Australian institutions, they think he's come raised because for 20 years, every time he goes and does the roadshow on the street, it's been, hey, okay, Silvio, how much money do you need, right? So they're not buying on market, they're not really participating in the stock, and I think that. Now that he's got, he's going to probably do US $120 million this year just from the sales alone, and he's able to roll that into his next trials. He's not, he doesn't need to raise money. So
he presented at our conference in, I think it was 2024.
Yeah,
it was, and Mesoblast was $1.
Yeah,
$1. And a bunch of us bought.
Yeah. Amazing
on the day.
Yeah.
It was a good trade. I don't hold it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that company has done really well. And that, it's like what you said, what's the next Mesoblast?
Yeah.
So you're looking at CYP.
CYP.
Okay.
Actinogen, I spoke to the guys this week. That was...
Is that ACW?
ACW, yeah. So they've got in November, this is probably one that I'm really looking forward to. So in November, they've got a phase, they call it a phase 2/3. I always find it interesting. I just pick a phase. Anyway, phase 2/3. For Alzheimer's. Yeah. So I think that if they get really good results here, it could be pretty game changing. Alzheimer's, huge market. This is one of those like high risk, super high reward ones, but also high risk, right? So like, who knows if they're going to get the good data and good readouts that they've had before.
Have there been a few failures, late stage failures in Alzheimer's?
Yeah. So last year there was 2. Novo Nordisk had a phase 3 for Alzheimer's. But it was actually their GLP-1s that they had a crack at Alzheimer's on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So no phase 2, no phase 1. They just said, all right, let's see if this works. Spend $100 million on it. And I mean, that's what they spent on like an absolute roll of the dice. You can imagine what Actinogen can be worth if they can get some really good results. So that's what I'm watching. Paradigm also has, I think it's for knee pain, coming up in June, July, I'd say. That one's really interesting. I want to see I don't know if Clarity is going to get their results by the end of the year. CU6, but I think that if they can get a product to market, like that one's sort of like on the cusp of getting to market, that will be really interesting. They're trading pretty high at the moment, but they could be in market sort of start of next year, end of this year. LTR Pharma, I'm paying attention to, which would be interesting. Nasal spray for erectile dysfunction, which is why I think the trial will be interesting is that they need to prove whether or not their product works in men over 50. So they had really good results on the first trial, but they haven't really tried it in their target demographic. So there is like really important, there is a risk that it doesn't necessarily work, but if it does, then that's actually a big de-risking event. So this is what I look for in the trials is like, are you just sort of like, doing what you already know, or is there an actual meaningful step out, that makes a difference to the data? It's sort of like if you're a mining person, this is like your full step out hole rather than you just, shooting down the guts and doing your standard exploration. Radio Farm, they've got, they've done 2 interim results. Both of them it looks like they're going to be on track for their brain metastasis trial, that will be really good, I think. They're one of those ones that do tend to spend, they've got like 3 or 4 trials running at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if they can sort of how they'll navigate if they can get good results, how they'll be able to navigate that plus all the other trials and the cash burn that they've got. And then Island Pharmaceuticals, another really interesting one. So I think that they'll run their animal trial. So this is one where they've got a antiviral product. And they've they've managed to get approvals or they've managed to get the sign off from the FDA to say that the animal rule, which is a very unique rule, saying that if you've got something like, imagine like smallpox or anthrax, where it's a really dangerous to actually, you can't really run it in humans, you just kill people. So the virus that they're going after, Marburg disease, they've got permission from the FDA to say you don't need to run a phase 2 or a phase 3. You can just get it passed with an animal trial and a phase 1. They've already got some phase 1 data. Whether or not they'll be enough, don't know. But they'll run the animal trials this year, and it'll be really interesting to see if they can get the product in market. And that's more on your bioweapon stockpiling, biodefense stockpiling, which would be interesting. So those are sort of the catalysts, and there's like heaps more that are coming up that will be really interesting. But those are the ones with the data readouts where I'm like really paying attention to.
So I might just summarize some of these, stock codes, I suppose, for people that want to pick some up. So we've got Amplia, which is ATX. Sonata, which is CYP. Immutep, IMM.
Well, their Immutep and Amplia had their results.
Yep. Paradigm, PAR. ACW. CU6, Clarity. Aveco, AVE, and LTR Pharma, LTP. And then you mentioned recently on your newsletter your first ever pick.
My first pick in my newsletter. Oh, yes, of course.
Yes, tell us about that.
So the first company that I chose to pick on the newsletter was a company called Tetratherix, stock ticker TTX. And there was it's a really, really interesting company. So at its core, it's a medical device company. They have a technology which is basically liquid at room temperature and hardens as it goes into the body.
Okay.
So it's a platform technology, which means it's got 6 or 7 completely different indications that it can go and markets that it can
target.
Target and service. So that's your it's bone healing for dental applications and the moment for knee pain. I can never remember the medical word for it.
Osteoporosis.
Osteoporosis. Yes. Spacing in the body. So for prostate cancer surgeries as well as ophthalmology. So people getting cataract surgery. So inject the thing into your eye and it spaces it out so that you can actually insert the cataracts, do the cataract surgery, as well as tissue healing for people who are, let's say you get heart surgery, you get they stitch you up and then inject the thing, and then it allows you it reduces the scarring.
Okay.
Huge market, that one.
Yeah.
Completely unmet need. And then the last one, this is the one that was like completely, this is basically the one that got me over the line in terms of tipping it as my first pick, was they've got this nasal spray technology that allows the delivery of GLP-1s, peptides, and hormones.
Okay.
So GLP-1s have been a massive, massive, massive thing in terms of the healthcare industry over the last 2 years. So first $1 trillion company in the life sciences sector is Eli Lilly, and they got that off the back of their I think it was the Wegovy weight loss treatment. Ozempic's been around for a couple of years. Novo Nordisk. It's been like there are these health trends, and this has just been one that's absolutely dominated. Last year there was a company called Metsera that Pfizer bought for over $10 billion US, and that was a weight loss company as well. And so there's this massive, massive amounts of money that are going into it.
I think GLP-1 might be the biggest addressable market in healthcare.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Right?
Yeah, more than like respiratory or anything.
Look, more than cancer.
I mean, it depends which cancer.
But yeah, you got cancer. Like, look, if it's not the biggest, it's in the top 3. Right? And there's a massive consumer desire for it as well, right? It's not just pharmaceutical desire; it's consumer desire. And so, what their product is one of the challenges with these weight loss treatments is that they're injectable, right? And not everyone likes needles. So one interesting aspect so I listened to the history of Novo Nordisk in a really good podcast, and they were describing the history. It's actually they've been around for 80 plus years developing insulin, and that's really insulin for diabetes. and that's been their only thing, right? And they or they're 80 to 90%, and what they've been really from getting old like pig pancreases and change and taking it and then all the way to synthetic, but also all of the delivery of insulin for people with diabetes. They've just become absolute experts. And as over time, the main thing that they've learned is that like getting a better delivery of the product makes a huge difference in terms of adoption.
Yep.
And so from the Ozempic perspective, Ozempic's been around for like 15 years, right? But you had to take it twice a day as an injection. Now, as soon as they moved it from once every 2 weeks or once every week, that's when it started to take off. And even though it was only for people with diabetes, like people realized the weight loss potential of it and then started taking it themselves. And you had this massive shortage of people who had diabetes basically like couldn't get their Ozempic because everyone, all the Kim Kardashians of the world started using it.
There's a good point in there. I just want to stress on mode of delivery for drugs. Always look at what can be made subcutaneous.
Yeah,
a lot 100%. In the partnership discussions, they'll always go after this. Which is a big one.
So the nasal spray delivery, which is really interesting, is it sticks. So when people have been trying to develop these nasal spray delivery drugs, is that they do the spray and then it just kind of like falls out, right? But their treatment or their delivery, you spray it in the nose and it sticks to the back of your nose, and then it slowly releases that GLP-1. So they've kind of got this. They've gone from needles to there's a Ozempic pill, which has been like amazing, but still challenging. Like the gut's like a really hard place to actually deliver a drug to the nose. And then that's like potential, like they basically could be the picks and shovels for the whole GLP-1 industry and peptides as well, which is
again picking up.
Yeah, picking up.
Massively.
So that's why basically that was the thing that got me in terms of tipping. Yeah. So anything else? No, not really.
Mate, thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Go sign up to the Armchair Analyst. We're going to link everything in the description and things like that. Really appreciate it. I know I've already made some money with the tips you've given me in the past.
Thanks,
so I'm hoping everybody else does too.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jess. See ya.
Yeah.